Hi, I'm John Verico. I spent more than 40 years in government communications, and a good majority of that with emergency responders in the emergency management communities. I was so honored when the Natural Disasters Expo asked me to come and speak to you. Now, sorry I can't be there with you in person, and I guess this is just another example of the impacts of adversity. The disaster caused by COVID-19 has impacted so many people in so many ways, and I'm grateful that I'm among the fortunate who are simply inconvenienced. The coronavirus pandemic had an enormous impact, and maybe nowhere more than in the medical community. Even before COVID, I've done a lot of work with the medical community and realized what a special breed of people they are. Now, some of you here may be in emergency medical services or in public health, and you'll certainly be able to relate to this. The people you deal with every day are not having a good day. They're in pain. They don't feel well. They're complaining. They're depressed. They're sad, maybe even angry. And when dealing with these people, you're witnessing pain and sickness and even serious terminal illnesses consistently. The medical and health communities hear it all and they face it all. And they're rewarded when they're able to help those individuals overcome illness, stop pain, heal. Sometimes they're able to help things more proactively with health management and get people to make lifestyle changes that make a difference. But it's not always successful. Sometimes there's nothing that can be done to correct the damage or restore things to the way they were before. And sometimes the damage is just too much. And they may have to watch people die, maybe even longtime patients or even friends. It takes a special person to be able to handle that. Now, let's take that up a notch. Those of you who are emergency responders, you're seeing travesty with every encounter. You rarely interact with people unless they're in distress, whether it's from property damage, personal injury, the death, or all of these things at the same time. Automobile accidents, fires, violent crime, all with devastating results. Now let's amplify that again to a mass casualty situation or the widespread devastation that comes with a natural disaster. All of the things we just said, only now simultaneously hitting dozens, hundreds, sometimes even thousands of people impacted by fire, flood, storm, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, other catastrophes. You can't undo the damage when someone has lost all their possessions, their car, their furniture, their entire homes, important stuff like their social security card and birth certificates and other important papers. And all of that is ultimately replaceable, but so many things aren't, like family photographs, or the pressed corsage they wore at their high school prom, or the first love letter they received from their wife, their baby's binky, the notebook full of mom's recipes, or the urn with grandpa's ashes. Let alone the tragic loss if a family member, a friend, or a pet is injured, killed, or lost. And maybe even it's worse when they're missing and their status is unknown. In these dark times, facing horrendous devastation and loss, it is so easy to get caught up in it all, to feel the pain and the loss of those you're trying to help. Meanwhile, you put your own comfort and safety aside and continue to keep going and continue to try to help, charging into burning buildings to save someone who couldn't get down the stairs, searching through unsettled, hazardous debris of a collapsed building for someone's cat. These aren't just stories, these are real incidents. I know, and although I'm not a uniformed responder myself, I was there with a team navigating the freezing waters of a storm-churned Chesapeake Bay after a charter boat was capsized, dragging a river in recovery operations after a flash flood, taking air and water samples to check for hazardous chemicals after a train full of tanker cars derailed and caught on fire and burned in a tunnel under the downtown Baltimore for 4 days. I was there. I know what you were feeling. I know what you were going through because I was there with you. Because these things happen in our own community, the people being impacted may also be people we know. maybe our own friends or even family. How many of you have had to put your own loss aside while trying to help others? And I don't even need to see a show of hands to know how often this happens. I've met firefighters from California who watched their own house burn while battling wildfires. Responders in New Orleans rescuing people from floodwaters while their own home was underwater. I witnessed the Red Cross in La Plata, Maryland, who, to provide services to the community after a tornado leveled the city, were setting up temporary structures on the bare concrete pad that used to be their facility. How do you find the strength to do this? The sense of loss and devastation can be overwhelming. Sometimes you just want to cry. And you know what? It's okay. It's okay to cry. Let that emotion out. But the amazing thing is, you then get right back to it. No matter what, you keep going. We find strength in the stories of survival and persistence. We're encouraged when we do get to help that paraplegic out of the burning house. When we find the cat scared but unharmed under the rubble. When that person we just pulled out of the water coughs up a lungful of river. And when that teddy bear is put back into the hands of a child in front of a pile of sticks that used to be their home. We aren't always successful, but when we are, we've made an enormous difference. And that is our light. With each disaster, with each catastrophe, we get stronger. We learn something. We learn something new. We come up with ideas that maybe will make the next time less devastating. There are people here at this conference this week that are developing early warning sensors so people can be more prepared when a catastrophic event is about to happen. They're putting technologies and procedures in place to reduce the potential damage. They're developing advancements in treating traumatic injuries, new construction materials that are more resilient, safety gear to help protect the responders that are going into these dangerous areas, and ways to keep shelters and emergency supplies in readiness for the next disaster. There are others who are studying the conditions that cause these severe weather events and seeking ways to lessen their strength and frequency. So whether you're in the detection side, the prevention, mitigation, response, or the recovery side of it, you're all making a difference. Know that, believe that. In the midst of the darkest times, you are the light. There's a wonderful old parable I'd like to share with you, and you may have heard it before. It's about a little boy on a beach, which is covered with starfish that had been washed ashore by a storm. As he approached each one, he picked it up and tossed it back into the sea. And the old man had been watching this for a while and finally approached the boy and he said, "Young man, why are you doing this? Look at the thousands of starfish on this beach. You cannot possibly save them all. You can't begin to make a difference." And the little boy was distraught at first and then bent down, picked up another starfish and threw it into the sea. And he said, "I made a difference for that one." It's a great story of how one person can make a significant impact for another. You are that little boy making a difference. No matter all the devastation around you, you're making a difference. Now, in variations of that parable and that tale, the old man is inspired by the little boy and begins to also help throwing starfish back into the sea. And soon others who had been observing this behavior began to do the same thing until ultimately all the starfish were saved. And that is where you make a difference. You inspire others to make a difference as well. And while some of you are focusing on tossing the starfish one by one back into the sea, others are coming up with ways to gather many starfish at once to restore them to the water. And yet others are studying to learn why and how the starfish became washed up in the first place, so that maybe they won't wash ashore next time. With each disaster, we learn, we grow, and we become even more resolved to make a difference. And while it would be nice if there were never any tragedy, if there were no disasters, if there was no adversity, But it's an unfortunate truth that there will always be storms. The earth will always continue to shift its tectonic plates, but each and every time we learn. Each and every time we get better at knowing what to do to reduce the loss. Each and every time you are making a difference. There's a special reserve of energy deep inside all of us that helps us to get through adversity. It's a special light that ignites when we face the darkness of tragedy. We can't always see it, but it's that special thing inside you that drove you into this line of work in the first place. For some people that are in the midst of experiencing loss and maybe overwhelmed by the darkness of the tragedy, you are their light in the darkness. Take pride in that. Let that boost and strengthen and brighten your own light. And then share that light with others. Thank you very much. Thank you for what you do every single day.